You can have a big poster on the wall. I think that's absolutely fine.
Oh dear. Dennis Campbell's with us in studio this morning. Hello, Dennis.
Good morning.
We have to say thank you straight away because you have stayed up virtually all night for us, because last night US President Barack Obama, of course, spoke to the nation, and it's still less than a week since the tragic shootings in Tucson, Arizona, where 6 people lost their lives. What was the speech like? I've heard snippets of it, and it sounded extremely passionate and emotional.
It was his usual very quiet, controlled emotion, but it struck the right tone for the moment. And I would say the largest applause line was when he said, and I quote, "I want America to live up to our children's expectations." And the room pretty much exploded, and there was probably about a 2-minute sustained ovation at that point. No finger pointing, none of the rhetoric that has been so white hot over the last several weeks. It was really a time for healing. The other big moment was when he said just after his visit there were several Congresswomen that were in the intensive care room with Representative Gabby Giffords, the woman who was indeed shot. And they said at that moment she opened her eyes. And again, very powerful, emotional moment for everybody that was there in the room.
There's been a lot of backbiting and sniping since the tragedy. It's a week now since the shootings in Arizona where 6 people lost their lives at the hands of the gunman. But a lot of backbiting and sniping for the campaign tactics and rhetoric from Sarah Palin. She gave an interview yesterday. I mean, for people in the UK who are not used to the kind of high temperature of American politics, I mean, it has got very, very unpleasant. Was it always such, or is this a relatively new thing?
It is relatively new, and I think it is a sign of a very latent and virulent racism that is growing inside of the United States. I think since the United States in 2008 elected a minority, a black man, as their president, it has somehow given free license to all of the crazies that would normally be somewhere else in a closet, spewing their hate or doing it online in a chat room. They seem to have the liberty now to just sort of come out with their guns strapped to their waists and their rhetoric streaming out of their mouth. I posted on the magazine a clip from the Louisville, Kentucky Examiner newspaper. They'd went around to a summer festival where there were a number of speakers, and it was so virulent and shocking. And the bumper stickers, Hitler made great speeches too. The tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots. Lots of references to guns, and it was never like that before. But in the last 2 to 3 years, it has become very, very toxic.
Is it gaining ground? I'm just trying to get a sense, really, of the scale of the problem. Is it still a very small minority, and the majority of the American people just disregard them, or is this really something quite serious that seems to be building?
It's hard to say because you have so many news outlets today that you didn't have before, with the blogosphere, with Fox, the Rupert Murdoch news outlet, that is essentially a paid arm of the Republican Tea Party that literally sticks to the talking points, stoking the fire of anger on the right. You have a number of intolerant and very strong voices on the left, and what's happening is that both sides are screaming at each other across the divide. And this last election that we just saw was cut very much along left-right lines. We've lost the middle ground in America. We've lost the place where either side feels they can sort of come together and find compromise. The incoming Congress that was just sworn in 2 weeks ago is extraordinarily polarized, very, very strong right-wing control because of the Republican victories, very strong liberal left-wing, and anybody that was in the middle was pretty much swept out of office.
The main blame for these shootings surely must lie with the US gun culture, which is so prevalent, which many people in Wales and the UK simply don't understand.
It was extraordinary. I was watching the Rachel Maddow show, which is a program on MSNBC you can get on a podcast here. And she did an intro on guns. I also put that in an article. But she gave some rather startling statistics. There are roughly 308 million people in the United States, and there are 270 million guns. That's like the per 100 is somewhere around about 60. 60 guns per 100 people, and the only place that it's less than that is 30, and that's in Yemen. It's a shocking statistic of the number of guns. The other issue that came up with this shooting was that the alleged shooter, Mr. Loeffner, had an ammunition clip that would hold 31 bullets. Now, prior to 2004, under the assault weapons ban, you could not have a clip that contained more than 10 bullets, and the then Republican Congress and George W. Bush decided to let that just lapse and did not renew that particular piece of legislation. So imagine how much less carnage there might have been had Loeffner only been able to get 10 bullets in a clip as opposed to 31 bullets, which is what he ended up spraying and wounding 20 people with extraordinary efficiency.
Were you brought up around guns?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. I mean, a gun was something that the policeman wore, and if you saw it, you sort of looked at it in awe. I mean, I know that there are parts of the U.S. where there's a very much a hunter-gatherer culture, particularly in the South. There's a lot of hunters, but when you try to do anything to limit or regulate guns in the United States, you run up against an organization called the National Rifle Association, which for many years was headed by the actor Charlton Heston. And he's known for standing in front of a group of people and saying, "You can pry my gun out of my cold, dead hands." And there's a very militant sort of culture. And I just read last night after the speech that there is a run now on the Glock 9, which is the weapon of choice of the shooter, saying because there's going to be pressure to take that gun out of service. So every person in Arizona, sales have gone up. I got to get it while I still can. And it's just an absurd culture.
Canada, it's said, has a similar proportion of guns, but much less gun crime. I mean, how do you explain that? And I suppose that will be seized upon by those who oppose any reduction in gun ownership and they will say it's not about the numbers of guns in society, it's about the people who use them.
Exactly. And Canada is a perfect example. As a matter of fact, in the Michael Moore film Bowling for Columbine, right after that horrific tragedy where the two young men in Colorado killed a number of students, that was a point that he made. He crossed the border from Detroit, where there were a record number of homicides, into Windsor, Ontario, where there were almost no homicides. He showed the gun statistics, and he could not understand why there was such a huge difference. It's a matter of there's a much more tolerant nature. Of course, they're a former colony, so they still do are a part of us. So I would like to say that that's the real reason, but it is an issue.
And do you think this will prompt at least a look at changing gun laws, or do you think things will just remain as they are?
Well, we did have a congressman rush to try to introduce a piece of legislation, but it was a Democratic congressman, and of course the Republicans control the House of Representatives, which is where bills are drafted, and Speaker Boehner has already put the kibosh on that one. That one's gone. I just don't see any serious gun control coming out of it, but I do see a focus on safety and issues of protecting and making sure that people are safe, and another focus on the mental health and well-being. I think you're going to see more stringent mental health checks come, because this Mr. Loeffner was, by all indications, a very damaged human being.
Denis, good to see you. Thank you very much. The political commentator, Denis Campbell. Jamie and Louise with you on BBC Radio Wales. 17 minutes past 9. This is U2.